Thank you, Jen. Thanks for coming out tonight, 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. I'm so excited to be here. I'm happy to be back in town. I was home for Rosh Hashanah. I was upstate, like very far north. So far north, it's Canada. I'm from Toronto. Any Canadians? Woo, thank you, allies of the Canadian people. Thank you for supporting immigrants. It's true, I am an immigrant in this country. I'm here on a visa. I'm good through 2025, so if you were thinking of proposing, my DMs are open, but you have time to plan something. But it's funny, being a Canadian immigrant is truly being the basic bitch of immigrants. It's all of the paperwork, none of the interesting cultural perspective. It's like, and I grew up in Toronto. I went to Jewish day school. I don't speak French. Like, I don't speak another language unless you count the metric system, which you should because it is superior to the imperial system by 1.6 kilometers. And yes, that is a direct conversion joke. And it's funny, I'm here living in the United States on a visa called the Aliens of Extraordinary Ability visa. I'm authorized to work in the United States exclusively as a writer and comedian. So we'll see how this set goes, but if it's good enough for the Department of Homeland Security, it should be good enough for you. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting being Canadian because, you know, people ask me, I'm an unofficial ambassador for my country. And so if there's one event in Canadian history I want you guys to know, it is this. In the year 2019, the Toronto Raptors won the NBA championship. Keep it going for the 2019 Toronto Raptors. Yes, thank you. It was the best thing to happen to me, personally. We needed it to legitimize ourselves as a franchise. The Raptors were established in 1995, which means they're millennials. Nobody likes millennials. It's funny, growing up, I had assumed we were called the Raptors because we Torontonians were very proud of our dinosaur bones at the Royal Ontario Museum. Like, I literally thought it was a paleontology reference. But no, it turns out we're called the Raptors because in 1995, there was a movie called Jurassic Park. Yes, and it was very popular. It's funny, I think it's so funny that our NBA team is named after a Steven Spielberg movie. Like, we literally just as easily could have been the Toronto Schindler's List. And don't worry, you guys, I can tell that joke. I'm from Toronto. I'm at that age where I'm about to turn 30. Also known as 29. I'm 29 years old, and I have a lot of friends who have partners, which means they're either getting married or becoming polyamorous. I find the poly lifestyle fascinating because I personally I'm single and I hate dating, especially first dates. It's like it's so tedious and boring. Like there are only so many times you can ask the same questions back and forth. Like, so where were you on 9/11? Like, it's exhausting. And then people who are polyamorous, it's like you're in a loving and committed relationship, yet you're still going on first dates. It's like, dudes, you've crossed the finish line. You could stop running now. But no, I'm in awe. I wish I had that sort of energy. Like I wish we could bottle up the energy of polyamorous people and we'd solve the climate crisis. It could power planes. Yeah, speaking of people with really active sex lives, I recently started teaching stand-up comedy to the elderly. Yes, it's been amazing. This past May, I taught a course at the Weinberg Center for Balanced Living at the Manny Cantor Center on the Lower East Side. And yes, keep it going for the Manny Cantor Center on the Lower East Side. I loved it. It was an amazing experience. I learned so many new things. I learned hot new euphemisms for sex. My favorite being quality time. As in, when my children moved back in during the pandemic, it was harder for my wife and I to get quality time. And they were fun. They were randy. Like that, the blue-haired people are blue comics. Like, I realized why every floor in the community center has a bowl of condoms. And more importantly, why that bowl is pretty much empty. By the last class, there was only 2 condoms left. I also learned about this thing called Tijuana Bibles, which is like, this is analog pornography. These were these pornographic cartoons that soldiers used to take with them overseas. So let's just say the soldiers in World War II were beating something other than the Germans. They were also beating the Japanese. Did everyone see Oppenheimer? Yeah, this was the summer of Barbenheimer. What a moment in the culture. Did you guys see the Barbie movie? Yes, and if you didn't see the movie, are you at least aware of the fact that it exists? Yes, the Barbie movie had the most marketing of any movie I've ever seen. Like, not necessarily the best, just the most. But I think it lived up to the hype. Like, Ryan Gosling was so good in that movie that I'm starting to think that men might be funny. I know it's only one guy in one movie, so I don't want to be saying anything too drastic. I put that joke on the internet, and you'll never believe this, but a man on the internet was mad. Oh my God. Twist of the century. This guy commented like, "Oh, you Nepo babies get one writing job and think you're Norm Macdonald." And I was like, first of all, thank you for the Canadian content. Shout out to Norm Macdonald, Alav Shalom, truly one of the greats. And second, I've never been called a Nepo baby before, which is really exciting for my parents. They've officially made it in show business without even trying. And I was thinking, like, who does this guy think I'm related to? So my name is Orli Matlow. There was a city councilman in Toronto who ran for mayor named Josh Matlow, but I don't think this troll followed Toronto municipal politics. So the closest thing I came up with is maybe he thinks I'm related to Rob Lowe's son, Matt Lowe. Yeah, real dude, first name Matt, last name Lowe. That's not me. That is not me. I do not benefit from the Rob Lowe bump, which in the 80s was just cocaine. The 1980s, not the 57 80s, which is what we're in right now. 57 84, off to a wild start. I say this every year, but I think 57 84 is gonna be my year. Yeah, I'm not a Nepo baby, but I could be if I wanted to. I could waltz right into 8 Skyam Day School in Toronto and demand a job as a guidance counselor, and they'd give it to me. But I have too much integrity for that. That's why I'm pursuing comedy where no Matlow has gone before. Yeah, I've done some traveling for comedy, which is really fun. I did a festival in Alaska, which I really enjoyed. As a Canadian, Alaska is just Canada, but with more guns and fewer teeth. I also did a festival in the UK. I was in Scotland and in London, which, if you're not familiar, it's like a Goyish in New York. And oh my God, I bombed so hard in Scotland that I thought would at least endear me to the English, but no. It was wild. In the UK, people didn't even know what a bris was, right? And like, in terms of Jewish references, that's not a deep cut. That's quite literally a shallow cut. So I took it upon myself for the rest of the trip to explain to the good people of the United Kingdom what a bris was. I would say, so it's like a christening. You give the baby their name, the whole family gets together. There's a buffet, because if there's one thing Jewish people and British people have in common, it's a love of tiny sandwiches. It's basically a christening, but with more dick, or technically less dick. And it was wild traveling across Europe and realizing like nobody got Jewish references because they don't have Jewish friends. And I was like, what happened? Don't worry, I'm not blaming the Holocaust for having to write new jokes, but it certainly didn't help. And it's very upsetting. Like 6 million people murdered 80 years ago would be 150 million fans by now. Okay, that was the audience I was robbed. If I weren't sufficiently angry about genocide then, I am absolutely livid now. Yeah, this is so exciting. So this is a Jewish show in that we're on the Upper West Side. Or no, we have Jewish comics. We're celebrating 5784, but there are a lot of different types of Jews. Reform Jews, Orthodox Jews, Seinfeld Jews. I personally identify as a psychiatric Jew. I feel most connected to my heritage in therapy. The DSM-5 is my 5 books of the Torah. And it's hard, with anxiety. Like, people don't really understand anxiety disorders because 60% of anxiety disorders are actually misdiagnosed as Judaism. But I'm one of the chosen people who checks off both the boxes. I'm a neurotic mess, and I know that because an ex-boyfriend explicitly told me. He said, Orli, you are a neurotic mess. Your anxiety is just too much. It's overwhelming. And I was like, excuse me? That's anti-Semitic. Okay, like I am the victim of a hate crime, but don't worry, I called Abe Foxman and the Anti-Defamation League, and they took care of it. Haven't heard from him since. Alrighty, are you guys ready for the show?